And now, it's time for the Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin.
Hello, listeners. I hope you're doing well and finding lots of happy reading time. Today, I'll be talking to the author of one of the most anticipated releases this year. Andra Loy is the author of The Roman Holiday Rule, a romantic comedy with magical elements. If you're not exactly sure what that means, I'll let her describe it to you. Andra and I met in 2019 when we were both pretty new at being serious, aspiring authors. She's been a good friend along the way, and I'm so excited to introduce you to her. Before we begin, I'd appreciate it if you would take a moment to follow me on Facebook or Instagram. You can find me at author Erin Mifflin. My inspirational historical romance debut comes out next April, and I can't wait to share it with you. Now, let's bring in our guest. Hello, Andra, and welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes. So your debut novel, The Roman Holiday Rule, just released a few weeks ago. Can you tell us what the story is about?
Sure. This is a rom-com with a little bit of magical elements. Lexi Walker heads to Rome with a detailed itinerary, and she has her mother's final painting for a festival, but the artwork starts coming to life in unexpected ways. And then on the plane, she meets architect Mark Russo, who's sworn off tourists after his last heartbreak. But then they make a playful bet on the plane, and it sparks chemistry that he can't ignore. So then as she's going around Rome and opening the 4 letters her mom left for her to open in different spots, she starts seeing a little bit of magic that she doesn't understand. So she's kind of trying to figure that out, avoid him, and none of it's working. So that kind of gets us going.
So tell us about the setting, which is Rome, as you mentioned. What makes Rome special, and what are some of your personal favorite memories from visiting there?
I actually did not want to go to Rome. I didn't think it was that special. Not super into history. I just kind of thought it was a big city. But then when we went, it was February, still flooded with tourists, but not probably as many as the summer. But it was so amazing. And every corner, every street that we wandered around on was just gorgeous. The buildings and the architecture and the food, you think it's a cliche, and it's it's so good. So for me, it was the surprise of finding a place that I didn't expect to really win me over like that. I thought it was just going to be a really big city, but it's super walkable, at least like to hit all the main sites. We never ever got on public transportation. We just walked everywhere, which for such a big city is a huge plus because I just love wandering around. And we were able to do all the main tourist sites just on foot with 3 kids in tow. And then so one of my favorite memories being there with my family, we were just there for like 3 days, but we watched Roman Holiday in the evening one night while we were there, because I don't know if the kids had ever seen it, and it had been a really long time for me. And so then we got all excited because we had already seen some of the sites. And so all of us were like, oh, we were there. And then so the main character, Gregory Peck, is staying in an apartment on a street. And we were like, I bet we could find that. So the next day we figured out where it was and went down that street and saw the place where they had filmed his apartment, but they were doing construction on it. So we couldn't really get a good, cool picture, but we were there. So that was really fun for all of us to be like, this is the spot from the movie.
That is cool. And I like stuff like that kind of comes up. I'm sure it was not on your itinerary, before
No.
you were there, and then it just kind of came about organically with your
Yeah.
family. So that's great.
Yeah.
So this book has plenty of Star Wars quotes. Are you a Star Wars fan?
Yes and no. We've watched all the extra stuff like Mandalorian, and there was like a cartoon made after it, and then Andor. So I've continued watching the Star Wars stuff as it's kind of grown. But for me as a kid, it was something I didn't mind watching it, but I have 3 brothers and got outvoted on the movie choice fairly often. So it was usually Star Wars or Indiana Jones, and we never watched anything in order. So I was super confused about the chronology of it growing up, when there were just the original 3. And I was confused about several words in there. I just kind of made stuff up what made sense to me. I thought it was
Oh,
lifesaver, not
lifesaver.
lightsaber. So I was wrong on both words. And, just kind of made it make sense in my own head and was super confused about the plot for a big chunk of my childhood. So my husband's had a lot of fun kind of setting that straight and getting me going on the right track. And I don't know how many times my kids and my husband have sat down to explain to me, how everything all fits together. Like my brain is just not made for like massive epic, 16 volume stories. So I love it, but it frustrates me a little bit.
So I also had a lot of brothers. And so I was just wondering, I was the oldest. So
Uh-huh.
that might have had a little bit. I watched plenty of guy movies too, but maybe because I was the oldest, I had more
Uh-huh.
say. Where are you at
Uh-huh.
in the birth order?
I'm second,
Okay.
but we were very democratic. So, I was voting for Anne of Green Gables every week and it wasn't happening.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, it worked out in the end.
So you say your books have elements of magical realism in them. So what does magical realism mean?
I think it's a term that we're still all kind of trying to nail down. I mean, I think in general, the elements are that there's normal everyday life, recognizable scenes and elements of normal life. But then there's something magical that really never gets explained and people just kind of accept it. So it's not something that needs this whole backstory of how it came about. There's no lore necessarily needed. It just happens. And like one of the main examples that a lot of people know is Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis. So he just wakes up as a cockroach and no one ever explains that. And I think for my stories, it's actually a slight misnomer because true magical realism probably usually has also an element of social commentary, and mine does not. I'm just using a slight bit of whimsical magic for something that I don't feel like explaining, and just kind of brings out the creativity of our world, that we have rules and sometimes they get broken. And that's the only thing that I'm really putting in there. But it's not fantasy, it's not sci-fi, and so magical realism is really the closest thing to kind of pin that down, although it's a slight misnomer, I would say.
I just kind of feel like with yours, it's just like little things that almost are more like delight, that you pop up and you're like, oh, interesting.
I do have a time travel that I want to do. So I guess that one would be more on the verge of sci-fi, but still rom-com. So yeah, it's just whatever. I just like throwing a wrench in the normal world.
Yes.
In a delightful, whimsical way. Mary Poppins,
Yes. Now, you're one of the first authors to publish with new imprint Haven. And can you tell us about your publisher and what readers can expect from the books that they publish?
Yeah, so it's a huge honor to be part of Haven. They publish romance stories that are wholesome, but there's no spiritual arc. So they're fine for, they'll fall under general market, but also there's not going to be language, there's not going to be explicit content, there's not going to be anything that would offend also Christian readers. I'm a Christian author. My books are not Christian. They're written from a Christian point of view. And so I would say that that's generally going to be true of Haven authors. So safe for readers like us, and then palatable for the rest of the world who might want to get a read that's not filled with spice. I think there's a growing market for that, and I'm super excited that Haven is offering that to a lot of people that might not try other books that are going to offer that.
And they seem to just be doing a fantastic job, just like rolling out the red carpet, getting this imprint underway.
Yeah, they are fantastic. They've been really great to work with. I would highly recommend all of their books. The covers have been great. The stories have been great. It's just been fun to do this with the other authors that are involved in this inaugural year.
Now, can you give us a sneak peek about what your next book will be about and when it will release?
I have to switch gears. This is so hard for me to jump from book to book. This next book is set in Paris. So there's a travel journalist who thinks that she's got a full life full of friendships that she's met around the world. She's a big people person, but she got a little bit burned the last time she was in Paris, and she blames Paris for her boyfriend jumping the gun on the engagement that they had kind of planned. He got kind of swept up in the moment in Paris, jumped the gun and proposed, and then reneged later. So that all got broken off. So she's a little bit gun shy about romance, slightly cynical, and then just very down on Paris. But her friend wins a giveaway for this tour, singles tour experience, and makes her go. And she thinks, okay, this is my chance to like break the Paris syndrome, talk to people about the Paris syndrome, write an article. I'll do this romance thing, and then use it to spawn this article that's going to be a tell-all mythbuster about Paris. But when she gets there, obviously things do not go as planned, and she gets kind of more and more sucked into this. It turns out to be a little bit more involved than what she bargained for. So that's what I've got coming, and it's called The Trouble with Paris.
Very nice. And it will release next year?
Yes, in the summer, July 6th,
Wow.
2027.
Very good. Yeah, I kind of got to experience that a little bit myself with my husband. We met and we got very serious about each other very fast. But I thought we were going to get engaged around the holidays, like maybe Thanksgiving. And then he asked me in early September, and I was like, well, yes. That's not exactly what I said, but it was it was like, yes, I already know I want to marry you, but I wasn't quite ready to make that full commitment. I was still processing everything. So I actually did. I said, can I keep this to myself for a few days? So I didn't tell anybody. I had like a secret engagement, like a Jane Austen character for a few days there.
Oh, that's cool though. I mean, not everybody gets that.
So.
My grandparents had a secret marriage for a few weeks.
Oh, wow.
Because he was getting shipped off to the war, and they weren't supposed to get married. Nobody knew that for years and years. They finally told us, like, in their old age, when it was safe to tell people.
That's great. It does happen sometimes.
Yeah.
So now switching gears again, when did you first know that you wanted to be an author?
I was pretty young. We read a lot. I was kind of a nerdy, shy kid. And so seeing myself in books or seeing characters I could relate to, and knowing that somebody was on the other side of that writing that. And so it wasn't just like, oh, I relate to this character. It was like somebody is behind this wall that gets me and understands and thinks the same things that I think. And so I always wanted to be one of the people on the other side of that wall, penning things that people could find themselves in and bring delight to people in that way and connect with people in that way. So I knew that pretty early on. And then my third grade teacher told me that when she was an old lady, she was going to go to the Bixby Library and see a book by Andra Coleman.
Aww.
And that was really inspiring to me, but I was kind of hung up on the fact that I would probably be married by then. It wouldn't be a Coleman book.
Yes. But she would know who it was, huh?
Right. There's not a lot of Andras out there, so I guess that she can find me.
That's such a special thing to have a teacher, give you that encouragement and plant that dream in your heart.
Right.
So just the path that you go on to be an author, though, can be a long one, that journey to publication. And you and I have been along a very similar path over the past 7 years. And we've often been literally side by side cheering for each other.
Yes.
So can you tell us about your journey from really starting to pursue publication to the point where you are today with your debut novel out into the world?
I would say I tried to get serious a couple times, like high school, college, and then as a newlywed. Then we moved to Europe, and I had kids, and I was learning a foreign language. I just did not have brain space to create for like 10 years. I call it the plastic years because we just, nothing could be breakable in a house with 3 little kids. And then I finally kind of started to come out of that and think again. And I remember it was like night and day. It's like I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm ready to do something and use my brain and be creative. And my husband really encouraged me to get back into writing. So I got serious, and a friend of mine said, you need to join ACFW. And so I did. And I got into the critique program. And so I was passing critiques back and forth and getting a lot of insight into my work from other people, and then entering contests and getting really good feedback from judges who are professionals. By good feedback, I mean like helpful critique. I don't mean, yay, good job.
Although
I mean,
that's
there were
nice
some,
too.
it is, but there were a lot of things that I had to learn. And so then so finally got assigned with my agent in September of 24, 23,
I think it was
somewhere in there.
23.
Okay, thank you. I am the only one who can't keep up with my life. Yeah, so I think I started seriously in 2019, and then you're probably right, 2023. And then we submitted this story in 2024. So I signed with Haven in the fall of 2024, and then they were starting Haven, and so it wasn't up and running yet. So it was a pretty long stretch from signing the contract with Haven to this summer. So obviously that was like a 2-year wait, or a year and a half almost. So yeah, so that was the easiest stretch, but also felt like the longest stretch, right? Because when you're in submissions and you're querying and all those other stages, you don't know if it's going to come to anything.
Yeah.
So you don't know how long that wait's going to be. But when you do know, and you can totally be excited about it, there's an end to it, so that makes it a lot easier, but it's only excitement, right? So it feels interminable.
Yes.
to wait.
Yes. But yeah, even from
So,
getting the contract, it usually is 18 months or more.
yeah,
Yeah.
it can be long.
So now, if we
So,
have any listeners who might be early on their own writing journey, do you have a word of encouragement for them?
yeah, find those people who are going to tell you the truth about your writing. Do not surround yourself with yes men. I mean, people who will be encouraging about it, but getting critiques from fellow writers and other people who are readers and know the business and know good writing when they see it, and just keep learning and getting better. And I think we all tend to think we're good, but I think there's always room for improvement, and we're not going to find it ourselves. And I get to that point with every story I write where I'm like, this is as good as I'm going to get it on my own. I've got to get some other eyes on this. So yeah, just finding writers, getting into a writers group, and then reading widely as much as you can so that you can recognize it and you can absorb the good writing, the storytelling, the craft.
Yes. Now, you mentioned you spent quite a bit of time living in Europe, more than 20 years. So, can you tell us why you moved there and what you did while you lived there?
I originally went after college to teach English at a small school in a very small town. It was like an after school program. So it was like kids all the way to retirees, not in the same class, but there were 2 other Americans there. And one was ended up becoming a really good friend of mine, my roommate, and then my future husband. So I fell in love that first year. And then so when we got married, even before we were engaged, we had to talk about our future plans, because our boss needed to know pretty early, are you coming back to teach again next year? So we kind of had to have a conversation way earlier than was comfortable about future plans. So we were both saying to each other that we would love to live in Europe long term. So after we got married, we stayed in the States for a couple years, and then we signed on with Greater Europe Mission and went back to that country and took language classes he took them for 2 years, and I took it for 1 year and got pregnant. But we were doing just different stuff with like teaching kids baseball and just kind of trying to get to know them and counsel them and mentor them and spread the gospel. And then we ended up back in that small town where we met, and we taught English at a high school there. It was a Christian private high school, but most of the students there are not believers. So it was a really good time to have 4 years with them. And my husband ran the extracurricular program and just planned all these really fun things to do with them. And it was awesome. We have a bunch of them over and go on retreats and just pour into their lives.
Yes. Now, for a while, you and your husband had a podcast called The Meet Cute.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about? And do you think you'll get back to making new episodes, or was that just for a season?
So the Meet Cute podcast is my husband and I comparing our perspectives, his and her perspectives on story tropes and romance and characters, the whole creative process, and even just life stuff. And it's kind of meant to be tongue in cheek because he doesn't read fiction. So him talking to me about all my craft and storytelling stuff is funny, but also I feel like it's insightful because he's so not into that world. He still has a really good editor's mentality. So he can tell when things are working or not working, but he also is not at all influenced by years of reading or talking about the story craft and everything. So it was really insightful for me because I'm like, well, you know, I'm kind of caught up in this and can't see the forest for the trees sometimes. So sometimes we disagreed and sometimes we agreed and sometimes we came to a new understanding of stuff. And it was super fun, but it was really time consuming to edit. And because we would just talk and talk and talk for like an hour. And then I was like, all right, I got to get this down to 20 minutes. So when we moved back to the States, it just consumed all my time. And then, with the book deal, I had a lot of stuff to do for editing and marketing and promoting the book. So I still have ideas. We plan to continue it, but we are not at a point in life yet where we're settled enough to focus on another thing. But after we've kind of gotten everybody a rhythm, and I mean, it just takes forever to adjust back to the States.
Yes, I can only
After so long
imagine.
gone. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been definitely a time-consuming and emotionally exhausting process. So we hope to get back to it, yes. So I hope there will be more seasons. We definitely have things we want to cover and talk about, and it was super fun. So we want to get back to it. I just don't know when that's going to be.
Right. Yes, I can relate to the editing. Even I love doing this show,
Hmm.
interviewing authors, but I would much rather have it be shorter and me have to
Hmm.
fill in something extra to meet the time limit than to go
Yeah,
over and have to cut stuff out. It is so
yeah.
time consuming to do
It
that.
is. And you can't skim audio. That's the problem for me
Yes.
because, you can just read something faster if you're editing, but for audio, you can't see what you're editing. You have to
Hmm.
actually sit through all of it
I have to make
over and
sure,
over.
does it make sense if I take this part out?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I was moving stuff around because I was like, this will fit, because we were just rambling. So it was kind of an editing nightmare. I actually paid my son to do it for a while, but then I still had to clean it up because I was pickier than he was. But yeah, it's very time consuming.
Well, is there a scripture that has been meaningful to you recently?
This one's been mine for a long time. And, I've got one kid in college and another one entering her senior year. So just thinking about, and I'm a little bit of a control freak about things. And so just having to, well, and you can see that in my books. It's like what every character learns every time is just relinquishing that and realizing I'm not in control, and trying is just hurting me and everyone else around me, and giving that over to the Lord. So there's this verse in Isaiah 25:5 that says, heat is reduced by the shadow of a cloud. And it goes on, it's talking about, their problems being solved and their enemies being stilled. But to me, that phrase, heat is reduced by the shadow of a cloud. And I grew up in Oklahoma. It can get really hot there. My mom said it was like 103 yesterday.
Mm,
And, that heat is brutal. And all it takes is not even the cloud, but the shadow of the cloud. And I just think you have something that just seems unbelievably strong and ruthless and unstoppable. And all it takes for God is the shadow of fluff to fix that. And so when I think about, how are we going to pay for another kid in college? How is this going to work out? How am I going to manage that? And where am I going to get the time for this or that? I come back to this verse because it doesn't take anything for God to fix what seems to me as insurmountable. And I just think it's a beautiful picture of the way that God works, and that I have to see things from his perspective. And I can't. I mean, I can try to remember that what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling and what I'm imagining is going to happen is not God's perspective. And he can fix any of those things that look impossible to me with nothing, you
yes.
know.
Yep.
So
That's a good perspective to keep in mind. Well, how can readers connect with you?
They can find me on my website, andraloy.com. I'm on Instagram most often. I'm not much on Facebook, and I'm not on anything else really. So my Instagram handle is Andra Loy. So if you know my name, you can find me.
Listeners, please do go to andraloy.com to find out more about Andra and find her links to social media. Let me spell her name for you. ANDRALOY, andraloy.com. And like I said, there you can check out her social media and subscribe to her newsletter. You can find episodes of the Meet Cute podcast, and you can find the Roman holiday rule everywhere books are sold. And I just thought I'd throw in that the reason I knew when Andra signed with her agent is because I was pretty much there when it happened. We were at the conference together that year, and it was one of my goals and another one of our mutual friends' goals to get Andra to meet this one specific agent. Andra had come to the conference specifically on purpose to meet her, and our friend Carrie and I were determined to make this happen for Andra. And it did take until the end of conference, but they did get to sit down, and then they signed with each other, and then it's just gone on from there. So that's a fun memory of one of the ways that we have been there for each other and supported each other as friends along this writing journey. And now I would appreciate it if you would also follow me. I love interviewing authors and sharing about their lives, their faith, and their stories. You can find me at author Erin Mifflin on my website or social media, and I have a newsletter as well. I'd love to have you along for the journey as my debut comes out next year. Until next time, happy reading!
Join us next week for another episode of The Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin. If you'd like to find out more about author Erin Mifflin, visit her Facebook and Instagram accounts.